The headlines are flashing red across global news desks. Iran has officially declared that reopening the Strait of Hormuz will be impossible as long as the United States maintains its economic blockade. This statement comes amidst a period of heightened naval presence in the Persian Gulf and a series of ship seizures that have left the international community on edge. While Washington insists its sanctions are a tool for diplomacy, Tehran views them as an act of war by economic means, using the world's most vital oil artery as its primary leverage. To understand the gravity of this situation, we must look beyond the heated rhetoric. This isn't just a local dispute. It is a high-stakes chess match with the global economy as the board. The concept of economic blockade. From a neutral standpoint, what the US calls sanctions, Iran classifies as a blockade. By cutting off Iran's ability to sell its own oil, the US is attempting to drain the financial lifeblood of the Islamic Republic. In response, Iran's threat to close the strait is a message of mutual pain, essentially stating that if they cannot export energy, no one in the region will. The geopolitical stalemate. Iran's stance is a calculated risk. By declaring reopening impossible, they are testing the resolve of the international community. They know that the Strait of Hormuz is a choke point in the truest sense of the word. Because the shipping lanes are narrow and pass through Iranian territorial waters, Tehran holds a natural geographic advantage that even the world's most powerful navy finds difficult to neutralize without a full-scale conflict. The psychological warfare. This headline serves as a powerful tool of psychological warfare. By creating uncertainty, Iran triggers a reaction in the oil markets. Even if a single shot is never fired, the mere possibility of the strait closing causes oil prices to fluctuate, insurance premiums for tankers to skyrocket, and global leaders to scramble for a diplomatic exit. Market analysts and energy experts are sounding the alarm as the standoff in the Persian Gulf intensifies. With nearly a third of the world's seaborne oil passing through this narrow corridor, the threat of a prolonged closure has sent ripples through the global stock markets. International shipping giants have already begun rerouting vessels or seeking additional naval escorts, while the US Fifth Fleet remains on high alert, emphasizing that freedom of navigation is a non-negotiable international right. In this section, we break down why the Strait of Hormuz is often referred to as the oil jugular of the planet and how it is being used as a strategic weapon. The weaponization of energy. For decades, oil has been used as a diplomatic tool, but what we are seeing now is the direct weaponization of a physical trade route. Iran's strategy is built on the reality of global dependence. Unlike a traditional war fought with tanks and planes, this is a war of interruption. By simply slowing down the flow of tankers, Iran can inflict billions of dollars in losses on global economies without ever declaring an official war. The global domino effect. A neutral look at the logistics reveals a terrifying vulnerability. If the strait is blocked, countries in East Asia, like Japan, South Korea, and China, would be the first to feel the hit, as they rely heavily on Gulf oil. This creates a ripple effect. As energy prices rise, the cost of manufacturing and transportation everywhere else follows suit. This is why the US blockade isn't just a bilateral issue between Washington and Tehran. It is a crisis that forces every major power to take a side. The insurance conflict. One of the most realistic but overlooked aspects of this crisis is the shadow war of insurance. When Iran threatens the strait, Lloyd's of London and other major insurers designate the area a war risk zone. This causes the cost of insuring a single tanker to jump by hundreds of thousands of dollars per trip. For many shipping companies, this becomes an invisible blockade. Even if the strait is physically open, the cost of moving through it becomes prohibitively expensive, achieving Iran's goal of economic disruption through financial pressure alone. As rhetoric reaches the breaking point, the military footprint in the region has reached its highest level in years. The US has bolstered its presence with carrier strike groups and advanced missile defense systems, while Iran's Revolutionary Guard, IRGC, continues to conduct high-profile naval drills involving swarm boats and coastal anti-ship missiles. Military commanders on both sides warn that in such a congested and high-tension environment, a single misunderstanding or a minor tactical error could ignite a full-scale regional conflict. This section examines the hard power aspect of the crisis and the dangerous thin line between posturing and actual combat. Asymmetric warfare versus conventional power. From a neutral military perspective, this is a classic case of asymmetric rivalry. The US possesses overwhelming conventional firepower, including stealth fighters and massive destroyers. However, Iran counters this with swarm tactics, using hundreds of fast-moving small boats equipped with missiles and mines. In the narrow, shallow waters of the strait, these small targets are difficult for large warships to track and neutralize simultaneously, creating a David versus Goliath scenario where the smaller force can still inflict significant damage. The mistake factor. History shows that most wars in the Middle East don't start with a formal declaration, but with an accident. In a zone where warships from different nations are operating within kilometers of each other, the risk of a miscalculation is extreme. A nervous sailor on a boat, a misinterpreted radar signal, or a drone flying too close to a sensitive area could trigger a chain reaction of retaliation that neither Washington nor Tehran may truly want, but both would feel forced to pursue to save face. The mine menace. One of the most realistic threats discussed by naval experts is the use of sea mines. Iran has an extensive stockpile of smart and contact mines. Laying these in the shipping lanes is relatively easy and inexpensive, but clearing them is a slow, dangerous, and high-tech process that could take weeks or months. This means that even if the US military wins a direct naval battle, the strait could remain effectively closed to commercial traffic due to the lingering threat of underwater explosives. As the world watches the standoff in the Strait of Hormuz with bated breath, the question remains, is there a way out? While military hardware dominates the horizon, back channel where the choice lies between a historic diplomatic breakthrough or a catastrophic economic collapse. In this final section, we look at the potential conclusions to this saga and what the new normal might look like for the region. The face-saving solution. In high-stakes international relations, neither side wants to appear weak. A realistic diplomatic exit would require a synchronized de-escalation. This means the US might offer limited sanctions waivers, allowing some countries to buy Iranian oil, in exchange for Iran providing verifiable guarantees that the strait will remain open and naval provocations will cease. This allows both Tehran and Washington to claim a strategic victory to their domestic audiences without firing a shot. The search for alternatives. This crisis has accelerated a global shift in energy logistics. Countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE are increasingly investing in pipelines that bypass the Strait of Hormuz altogether, reaching the Red Sea or the Arabian Sea directly. From a neutral standpoint, the more the world builds workarounds for this choke point, the less leverage Iran holds in the long run. However, for now, no pipeline in the world has the capacity to replace the massive volume of the strait. The long-term cold peace. The most likely future scenario is not necessarily a grand peace treaty, but a state of cold peace or managed tension. We are moving into an era where the Strait of Hormuz will be permanently militarized. International maritime coalitions will likely become a permanent fixture in these waters, and the threat of closure will remain a ghost that haunts global energy markets whenever political tensions rise. At last, the Strait of Hormuz remains the ultimate barometer of global stability. While the headlines focus on the threat of impossible reopenings and blockades, the underlying reality is a deeply interconnected world where no nation can truly win a war that destroys the global economy. The path forward requires a delicate balance of strength and restraint, proving that in the modern age, the flow of trade is just as powerful as the flow of ammunition. Diplomacy continues in neutral capitals. International mediators are working feverishly to find a middle ground that would allow Iran to export enough oil to sustain its economy while addressing US concerns over regional security. The global community is now at a crossroads,